Matches, Sunday, 6:04 p.m.
Yo, I don't know what going on. You got your
The police said that he had called her phone like 300 times that night. So, yes, I was concerned. We had hope that she was still alive, but it was hard. It's hard to describe unless you have somebody that you care for goes missing.
This case was the first no-body murder trial in Baltimore County. Not only did we not have a body, we didn't even have a crime scene. But before we can establish that someone murdered Tracey Tetso, we have to establish that Tracey Tetso is dead.
He wanted to hurt her because he couldn't control her. He wasn't going to have it. And to this day, he still has control of her. He knows where she is, but nobody else does. Nobody else can have her. Nobody else can see her. She's all his. And I have no doubt he'll go to wherever he put her. I have no doubt. Tracey was my foster sister. I hate putting that label on there, so we'll just say she was my sister. Both my mother and I worked at a girl shelter, and she ended up being one of the girls there. Tracey was probably 14, 15. There was issues at home, so she was removed. She just spread her smile to everybody else. I couldn't really show her favoritism, but she knew she was my favorite, Mom's favorite. So we thought, hey, what if we became her foster family? So we went to her social worker and got the process started, and we were accepted, and we told her, and she cried. She was definitely family. When I first met Dennis, he was a little quiet, and Tracey is a fun person. She was and going places, so I just thought it was just an odd coupling. But Tracey had told me that he had been asking to get married, and she was thinking about saying yes. And I asked her, are you sure you're ready for that? Because she was one who used to always say that she was never going to get married. Honestly, it really happened. I figured at some point she would, back away, but she didn't. They were together several years before she got married. Their wedding, it was lovely. Everything was beautiful. She was beautiful. She seemed very happy.
She looked so pretty in that dress. And there's the mullet. Before the wedding, Dennis was supposed to get his hair trimmed and get rid of his mullet. He didn't. And she was not happy. She was not happy at all. She loved him. Yeah. They were happy. I met Tracey when she got a job working with us. We worked for a concrete material supplier, hers, and she came to work in the dispatch. Tracey and I got along great. The fact that she loved music, and I love music too, and live concerts. Tracey would tell you, next month I'm going to the Ozfest. I won't be here. I'm taking off. She just loved life and loved to enjoy it, and, she was rough around the edges, but March 7th, 2005. I was doing a work at 8 o'clock. As soon as I sat down, the phone rang. It was Christian. I had never spoken with Christian before. He was a driver at our company. He said, "Monica, this is Christian, Tracey's friend. Is she in yet?" I said, "No." And he explained we were supposed to go to the concert together, and she never arrived. I found that very odd because Tracey would not have missed that concert. At that point, I wasn't too upset. I explained to him, wait an hour, because Tracey's always on time. She always shows up. If she doesn't, she will call me. I was busy answering phones and dispatching and managing, and I waited till 9 and she didn't show. That's when I knew something was wrong. That's not Tracey. Tracey, if she's due at work, she's going to be at work. So, yes, I was concerned. No answer.
Hi, how you doing? This is Tracey. Call me back. Bye.
I contacted Dennis and I said, "Have you seen Tracey? She hasn't shown up." He just felt, she's probably drunk somewhere over at a friend's house. And I said, "She care of her dogs. And those were her babies." And I said, "I'm going to make some phone calls." I just had a sinking feeling. I knew that something bad had happened. So I contacted hospitals. I said, "Do you have any Jane Does?" It was hard. But what if they said yes? What if she was dead? I was panicking. Where was she?
When I first got assigned to the case, 4 years after her disappearance, I am handed a blue book provided by the Baltimore County Police Department. It's basically the investigation. Before I opened the book, I knew very little about this case. I knew that Tracey Tetso had disappeared on the way to a Motley Crue concert and that she'd not been found. What Dennis told police was that he was at home outside, that Tracey came home from a store and she went in the house. He decided to take a shower and he estimated that this was around 6 to 6:30. When he finished his shower, he came back out into the house and she left without telling him where she was going, and he never saw her again after that. When police asked Dennis what he thought happened to Tracey, he said she had probably been out drinking and stayed at her boyfriend's house the night before. He suspected Tracey was having an affair. In any investigation, but especially in this case, when investigators literally did not know what had happened to Tracey.
This is Tracey's school picture. Back she says, "I love you and don't forget it. Love, Tracey." Still got it. I told her I would, and I'm gonna keep it forever and ever. She was pretty special. She was definitely one of a kind. That girl.
That Monday, when we couldn't find her, I left work early to go try to help find her and drive around anywhere I could that she might be, which any of her hangouts, didn't find anything. From the start, I stayed in touch with Dennis. He was legitimately concerned, that she was missing.
I woke up in the morning, she wasn't there. I thought she stayed at her friend's house. You just don't diss Tracey. Please call somebody and come home, please.
From the beginning of the investigation, Dennis did seem to be cooperative with police. Certainly, he spoke with them and agreed to be interviewed by them, answered their questions, and made himself available to police. This is a photograph taken of Dennis Tetso's neck, and you can see that there are 2 small scratches on the right side of his throat. Investigators were looking for any sign that there had been a struggle. Marks were more likely created by a piece of jewelry that Dennis wore. In looking around their home, there were no signs of blood or any evidence of a struggle. Investigators had to consider the possibility that Tracey had merely left town. Dennis was aware that his wife Tracey was having an affair, and he told police that it wasn't unusual for her not to come home and not tell him where she was. There were no signs that she had packed anything up. But Tracey had a black sports car that was missing along with her. Police were very interested in locating the car. They put out a bolo, or be on the lookout, to police forces around the country, and that information was put out by the media as well. And we learned that the call 7:48 p.m. on March 6, 2005 from records from Easy Pass. Investigators learned that Tracey visited a drugstore, purchases made by Tracey. They then were able to find a receipt linked to that shopping visit. They were able to obtain surveillance video from the drugstore showing Tracey Tetso at the location. That clip is important because in examining Tracey's phone records, detectives found that the last call Tracey made from her phone was a call to Christian Sinnott at 3 o'clock on March 6th of 2005. Investigators learned that Christian Sinnott was the man he was the person that she was supposed to spend that evening with. Police learned that he attempted to call Tracey numerous times on March 6th.
New messages, Sunday, 6:04 p.m.
Baby girl, what are you doing? Come on, please. Give me a call. Don't make I'm gonna come up to your house. Okay, please call me when you can. All right. Yo, this is not cool, man. I don't know what the going on. You got your phone on with you with your husband or something?
Because Christian Sinnott was the person that Tracey was having an affair with at the time that she disappeared, the police were definitely interested in speaking with him.
I wanted to help find her. And right away we we started putting the word out. A fan had wrote in to Motley Crue and had told them that, their biggest fan didn't show up for their concert in D.C. So they got in touch with the police and they wanted to donate $10,000 toward organized searches. We did that all ourselves and got together and said, we're going to do this for Tracey. And we did. We had hope that she was still alive, but you get your hopes up and then you're down in the dumps again. You just, hard to describe unless you have somebody that you care for goes missing. I'm sorry. I did not know Christian, so yes, I was concerned. I knew Christian was like a muscle guy, bodybuilder, and I didn't know. Did he do something? The police said that he had called her phone like 300 times that night. Tracey said Christian was very sweet to her, what he was capable of.
Police did take a look at Christian Sinnott. They learned that the last cell phone call Tracey made was to Christian at 3 o'clock on March 6th, 2005. But cell phone records put him nowhere near the location of her disappearance in Baltimore, and instead corroborated his account that he was in the DC area waiting for Tracey and attending that concert. What their investigation revealed is that he could be ruled out. Police located Tracey's car on the lot of a motel, actually not that far from her home in a neighboring county. Police wanted to take a look inside the car, so their natural starting point was to ask Dennis, figuring the husband of the car owner would have a set of keys. Police went for the keys. He said that they were the spare set of keys. There was no forensic evidence found inside. There was no evidence of a struggle. There was no blood. There was no indication of where she had gone. Police did conduct a search. They looked in the area. But the police were not able to find Tracey. However, they were able to recover a video from the hotel that showed the parking lot. This is the surveillance video from parking lot dated March 6th, 2005, the day Tracey Tetso disappeared, and it shows her vehicle pulling onto the lot and parking in a space. You can see a shadowy figure emerge from the driver's side door of the video camera is too far away to reveal who the person is. You are really not able to view any features of the person. You're not even necessarily able to tell their gender. But you can say, based on their proximity to the next door vehicle, that they appear to be probably watched this clip over 50 times, but ultimately it was impossible to make an identification.
couple days after we got the news about Tracey being missing, we got the phone call from meet with him in person. When I saw that video, I was sitting down and I looked at it and I stood up and I said, "It's that son of a bitch Dennis. That's Dennis." That was the first thought in my head when I saw that person get out of that car. Tracey's short like I am, truck next to the car. So when they got out, much taller than the pickup truck. Straight up not Tracey. My first thought, Dennis. I had no doubt. None.
At first, I believe that they got along well. They liked going to concerts. They had a good time together. But Dennis was very possessive. He didn't trust Tracey. I told Tracey, I said, if someone does not trust you, how can you have a relationship? She goes, I know, but I love him. So it was always there, but it really got worse after they got married. One night, Tracey and I went to dinner at a restaurant. Dennis kept calling. I would think at least 10, 15. How long are you going to be? Who are you with? Tracey was very frustrated with that. She'd really start complaining about she can't go anywhere. She believed that he was borrowing people's vehicles to follow her, to spy on her, and she broke down and told me that she got accused, and she told me, she said, if I'm going to be accused of it, I might as well. She said Christian was being so nice to me, and one thing led to another. She said, I never meant for it to happen. She didn't want to. He pushed her into that. And that's when everything went downhill. Dennis had contacted one of my coworkers and asked him to check around to see if Tracey was messing around on him. So our coworker was listening to phone conversations, and he found several conversations to those recordings. Dennis heard Tracey speaking with another man on the phone. Dennis, from what I understand, was very mad, very upset with Tracey. Around January of 2005, she was really done with him. Tracey had asked him to move out, but in 2 storage containers he had. So we thought he was leaving.
Dispatch.
I ain't got to me out by the end of the month.
You got 30 days then.
Any problem? I'll you out of the house. You ain't got to worry about it. I just hope you know you're making the right decision.
No, I'm not going to be with somebody who's like you.
Oh, like me?
Yeah, I'm tired of being calm and everything about all this. I about had it up to my eyeballs with you and your mess.
That's... wow. She told him like it was. She didn't hold back. She wasn't afraid of anybody. She'd tell you the way it was. Yeah, I miss hearing her.
What we learned about Tracey's job was that as a dispatcher, her telephone calls at work were recorded, and the police were able to listen to numerous conversations between them.
But no, you know what? You're still not happy because you want the house to yourself so you can bring people in there, whoever you Hey,
Whatever.
show everybody.
What?
You want
Okay, I'll show everybody.
Tracy, you brag about the house.
How do I brag about it? I'm proud of my house. Bottom line.
Phone conversations between Dennis and Tracey that she viewed the home they lived in as very much hers. And it was a home she bought, and she wanted him out. She wanted him to take his things and leave. This was not a woman who would just disappear of her own volition. It did occur to us that we are potentially looking at Tracey's murderer. And there was some frustration associated with the fact that we couldn't actually identify that person from the video. But the police were able to use this video in another very important way. When you see the lights flash in the video, it indicates that the car has been locked with a remote key. When Dennis handed the keys to police, he said that they were the spare set of keys. So the next step in the investigation was to determine who had the other keys. Police just started to ask, well, how many sets of keys did she have for the car? The previous owner of the vehicle, the person that had sold it to Tracey, and asked him how many sets of keys did he sell with the car. He said there was one set of keys and one remote. The only person who said that there was a spare set was Dennis. So it looked like Dennis was the person who parked. Ultimately, with the information the police had, they did believe that Dennis Tetso was the prime suspect and the person responsible for Tracey's death. But before we can establish that someone murdered Tracey Tetso, we have to establish that Tracey Tetso is dead. Not only did we not have a body, we didn't even have a crime scene. But without recovering her body and without any new leads or information, it seems like the investigation has hit a dead end.
When all this information came out, all this evidence against Dennis, I wanted his, there wasn't a body. They felt they couldn't do that. So I was really disappointed. I would talk to my mom about it, and she would say, just don't worry. Because the more they can get on him, the tighter they can nail that coffin on him. But the months went by, and still nothing. Even police searches. Each day came with its own array of feelings. Like sometimes it was hopefulness, desperation, sometimes, anger. That really was how the emotions ran during that 4 years.
I have to say it was very hard to see missing. We just figured nothing was going to happen. It was a cold case. She wasn't going to be found. Nobody was going to get convicted. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
As the years went by, the police continued to check into any new identity that Tracey might have found somewhere else. The U.S. Marshals were involved in trying to establish that she was somewhere else. It seemed she was really just gone. And for the state's case, we need to prove that she's deceased. And time worked in our favor until we felt that sufficient time had passed to truly establish beyond any doubt that Tracey Tetso was dead. And we went ahead and made the decision to charge Dennis Tetso with her murder.
are charged with the murder of your wife, Tracey Tetso, who disappeared on March 6th, 2005. Friends of yours, friends of hers, family members, neighbors, you name it. Monday, I met with the grand jury in Baltimore County and presented a case to the grand jurors, and they voted unanimously to indict you for the first-degree murder of your wife. You may have moved on with it since 2005. Never. Do you have any questions of me?
I want to talk to my attorney.
Okay.
To a trial, I felt very nervous. This case was the first no-body murder trial in Baltimore County. So there had never been even an attempt to try someone for murder when the body of the victim was not recovered. If we failed in our prosecution and Dennis was found not guilty, that was a lot of pressure, but what we had was the fact that he had means, motive, and opportunity. Their deteriorating relationship, the fact that he had the only keys for her car, the fact that the shadowy figure in the video is about the same height as Dennis Tetso. The recorded phone wished Tracey wanted Dennis out of the house. Dennis was reluctant to going. He worked for a construction company. He had access to equipment that moved debris to be dumped at sites that were then filled in with concrete. So if you're going to make someone disappear, this seems to do it. The judge sentenced him to 18-year period of supervised probation, and if he were to violate the conditions of his probation, he could potentially go back to jail for the balance of that sentence up to 30 years. I do not believe that the punishment fit the crime. It just doesn't seem like justice for Tracey or her friends and family. But murder tried in Baltimore County and that we were successful really paved the way for future cases. The fact that we were able to convict Dennis Tetso of murder, I think meant so much to Tracey's friends and family. I think they felt vindicated. They felt validated.
I was ecstatic that he got convicted second-degree murder, but we wanted first-degree. I believe if you take a life, your life should be taken. Eye for an eye. I have to say, as time went on, I started to wonder if she's just gonna disappear out of everybody's memory but we got justice. I know she's happy that we fought for her. I still talk to her. You know? I believe she's in a much better place, and we'll talk to her every once in a while and just say, hey, miss you down here. I'm here now. Stop your blubbering. Excuse my French.
hardest part of all this is knowing that Dennis is going to get out and be free to walk the earth, and Tracey's not. And it's not fair. He wanted to hurt her because he couldn't control her. You know, she was slipping out of his hands. And he wasn't going to have it. And to this, he knows where she is. But nobody else does. Nobody else can have her. Nobody else can see her. She's all his. And I have no doubt that when he gets out of prison, he'll go to wherever he put her. Because that's his claim. She's his. His property. Nobody else can have her now. Just his. And he'll... I want her story to continue to be told for as long as it needs to be. Still missing. I can't hug her, I can't see her smile. So that wound, it'll always be there.
If you could say something to her, what would you say?
That I miss her. And I wish she was here. She'll always be my sister.
My wife handed me the phone and said, "Your dad's on the phone. Something serious." Dead outside of her car on a gravel road. She found somebody that she thought loved her unconditionally. But this guy was the ultimate con artist. If I could go back, I would have done everything in my power to keep her away from him.
Molly Watson believed she was getting married right up until the last day of her life. Melanie Addy believed she was living in a normal marriage with her husband, and these two lives were on a collision course. He was going to be forced to make a choice.
I looked at the investigator, I said, this is... I questioned everything. Everything from the beginning to the end. It was the darkest time of my life, and it was hard. It was very hard. I think he enjoyed it. I really do. I think he loved the game. I feel disgusted about it. I just don't think anybody would see, like, their dad that they grew up with and had loved would do something like this. Do you think you'll ever forgive your dad for what he's done? I don't know how to answer that one.
There's birthday girl.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Molly.
I miss her dearly. Molly's very special.
Make a wish. Molly. Make a wish. Well, the one is backwards. It is. You're lucky to find the
Big one back.
She had no idea how special she was to all of us. About Molly was the fact that she was just a genuine person. She didn't try to fake anything. She was herself at all times. It didn't matter who she was around or what she was doing. She always stayed true to herself. Molly was excellent at school. Her grades were always great, computers, and then she wanted to go back for teaching. And she got that degree, and then she was trying to get her PhD in psychology. But she was too trusting in people. She was very naive and just loving, and people would take advantage of it.
I am as Asperger's syndrome, so if I seem awkward in the videos, now you know why.
Being her brother, I felt like I needed to protect her. Got this job at a state prison as a corrections officer. I didn't think it was a good fit for Molly because physically she was very, very short. You know, I figured mentally she could probably handle the job because Molly was always a good listener and she could give good advice without being biased on anything. And she just, me and my family had no idea how somebody with Molly's stature could control, you know, some of these. And there's some violent inmates at this prison that, you know, it was always a worry of ours. Something could happen. But then again, I'm biased because I am her brother, always protect her. Molly was over the moon. I found out from my mom and dad she was very excited. Molly would tell me things like, you know, she was excited about it. She loved finally have either gotten divorced and the rest of her life as a good person. And that, you know, once his divorce was final, they were going to be happy together. I'm used to seeing her just like this. I still can't believe she's been on time for 7 years. In 2018, when she told me they were going to get married,
It was not a commonly traveled road. It was a wooded area. There were no street lamps that would make anything visible at night. A local Monroe County resident was passing through the area and discovered a gun point blank, a single gunshot wound to the back of her head. Law enforcement used databases to run her plates on her car. In addition, a search of the car revealed standard documentation that identified Molly Watson. A cast was taken of this tire impression at the crime scene and was submitted to the Highway Patrol lab. Law enforcement also observed something in the roadway. They stopped and they collected it. It turned out to be a white t-shirt. It was packaged as evidence in case it was relevant to this case because of its proximity to the crime scene. An initial search of Molly in the passenger seat that did have the name Molly Watson on it and the name James Daddy. They were supposed to be married in less than 48 hours. Once James Addy was identified as Molly Watson's fiancé, they did go to his home to provide him with a death notification.
About 2 in the morning, I noticed police car lights in the driveway. And Jim actually met them at the door. They walked in, there was about 4 of them, and I was standing at the end of the hall, and I said, "What's going on?" And everyone looked at me like they didn't know who I was or why I was there. "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm his wife." I just remember them being very silent. I was just very confused. What is going on? What is happening here? I couldn't hear what was being said and kind of felt like I was being left out. So I moved closer, and that's when he sat down, and he said, well, we're just investigating. We found someone dead, and I thought, well, this is probably related to Jim's work. He was a corrections officer. Maybe it's someone that he knows or he worked with, and that's why they're here. That was my assumption. They asked me, do you know Molly Watson? And I said, no, I don't know who that is. And I was like, I still don't know what's going on. They didn't tell me what was happening until he was taken out of the house. They took him, put him in the truck, and then they told me who she was and how she was connected with my husband. They were supposed to be married. And I looked at the investigator. I said, this is crazy. Are you sure you have the right person? And he said, oh, yes, we have the right person. He told me that they were planning to get married and that she had been killed. And I didn't have a good answer because I had gone to bed. I don't know what time he got home. I remember I had a glass of water and my hand was shaking. I remember being cold. I remember being shocked. I felt very numb. Like this is not my life.
About 3 o'clock in the morning, and my wife came in and woke me up and handed me the phone and said, your dad's on the phone, something serious. And I'll never forget my dad. He said, Timmy, he says, the highway patrol just left the house. You could hear the sorrow in the voice. They found Molly dead outside of her car on a gravel road. I remember my blood pressure shot up and just kind of being lightheaded. My first thought was maybe she was stressed out from the wedding and she committed suicide. And then I knew in my head, I'm like, that's not something she would do. Then it had something to do with this because, 9 times out of 10, it's the husband or boyfriend that they first go talk to. The first time I ever met him face to face, he could never look you in the eye. You ever just met somebody that just automatically... I thought he was a con. He would drain her bank account because he made her pay for everything, trips to Florida, Mexico. I couldn't tell Molly any of my concerns about him because it would make her very upset. The only way to describe Molly's love was she had blinders on the whole time. The divorce story didn't add up to me because I know on Missouri CaseNet you can look up court cases of divorce, and when you looked up his name, none of them showed up. I told Molly to look up his divorce. She would have seen that it wasn't on there. But what was in front of her? I think deep down, she didn't want to believe he was married.
This is a picture of my dad and I when I was in elementary school at a daddy-daughter date night thing that the school was holding. Back then, we were just living our lives, and those happy memories are true and genuine. He was a really good dad to me. We were really close. It was about 7 p.m. and my dad said that he was going to go visit a friend, and then he left. mom had gone to bed. I remember my dad getting home. He walked into the living room where I was and he asked me, "Hey, what are you still doing up?" And I said, "Just turning in home." Nothing really seemed out of the ordinary about my dad. He just seemed normal to me. After I'd finished all my homework and stuff, I told him, "I'm going to bed." And he hugged me and kissed me on the forehead and said, "I love you." And that was the last time I saw my dad. I got out of bed and I noticed that my grandma and her husband were sitting there. Everybody was really quiet. And I remember Mom saying quiet, heard her say, "How am I going to tell her?" And then she walked up to me and said, "A woman has been murdered and Dad has been taken in for questioning." I didn't really know what to think, but I could see that, so I started crying. And she told me that everything's gonna be okay. I was still thinking, like, I don't know what's going on, but I guess I'll find out after prom.
I didn't tell Emma about the affair. I just did, and they were just doing an investigation. Emma asked, "What's going to happen?" And I said, "I don't know." And I said, "We just have to get your dress and get your shoes and make sure your hair's good." And so that's what we focused on that day. I was absolutely putting on a front. Yeah, I didn't know what was going to happen. And saw Emma, and that was that night, yes.
I'm still struggling to understand how you did it.
Because it was Emma. And she deserved a good time. In March 95. We look very happy, don't we? I mean, it wasn't a perfect marriage. We did not have a perfect marriage. I don't think most people do. But I thought that we both tried to make things work. I think, we learned to fight better as we got older. We did much more fighting at the beginning of our marriage than we did at the end. We mostly fought about money. He would use the credit cards, and I didn't know what the purchases were or what they were for. And he would give an explanation like, oh, he had to fix something on the cars or buy something for the house. And, I don't know, very small could still be very expensive, and I wouldn't recognize that. So he could tell me something, and okay, all right, well, maybe that's right. I don't know. We all drove old cars, so maybe he was spending money on cars. I don't know. I just told myself, you know what? We have different spending habits, and, he wants more stuff than I do. I have different priorities. I wanted to save my money for traveling, and he was, and, you do learn to let things go. And I feel like he let things go for my sake. So we were really, I thought, very connected in that way, that we had been together for a long time, and we were just working together to make it work. We were married 23 years. He was home every night. If I missed something, I don't know what it was. We got along well. He was very charming and sweet and engaging. Jim had no tolerance. for people that had affairs. He absolutely hated it. So, to have an affair, never. I didn't believe it. I wanted to search the garage and the loft area because I knew that's where his things were, and I knew if there was any evidence that's where. I looked around the garage and saw a bunch of tools that didn't mean anything to me, so I walked upstairs to the loft. And I saw boxes with Molly Watson's name on them on the side. I opened the boxes. There were mostly just household stuff, kitchen stuff, just a lot of boxes of her things. She was planning to move into my house after they were married. Is really the only thing I can come up with. Then I found a locked chest. And that's when I found the photo album of him at Disney World with Molly. He told me trading specifically for his job, but he was not doing training in Florida. He was on a vacation with his girlfriend. I was very angry in that moment. I knew in an instant that everything was different. I knew it was not going back. There was no way. And for us.
This is a marriage license issued for Molly Watson and James Addy. You do not have to prove that you're divorced to be issued a marriage license, but he did sign an under oath eligible to be married. James Addy was living a double life, but Mr. Addy's position was that he was not the person that had killed Molly Watson. When law enforcement separated Mr. Addy from his wife, they interviewed him. James Addy had provided was that he was going to meet with a coworker. He left his home at 7 p.m. He got back home at 8:30 p.m. and that he had talked to Molly once he got back home. He did show investigators a 22-minute phone call between himself and Molly Watson. And that was the last phone call that she had with anyone. During that interview, at one point, he began sweating visibly. He stood up during the interview, opened an exterior window to the home, and placed a box fan in the window, blowing on him. Mr. Addy did tell him. In Mr. Addy's garage, they located a late model Mercury Sable. They were able to observe the tires on that car, and they appeared consistent with the tire impression that they had seen at the crime scene. The tires were seized off of his car and submitted to the lab. A judge determined there was sufficient evidence to continue beyond his arrest.
Molly, I can honestly 100% say she was fully in love with him. I mean, just, smitten with love for him. It's hard. I would try to bring up something's not adding up with this guy, and she didn't want to hear it. She wanted me at first to be in the wedding party as like her groomsman, and I flat out told her no. She found somebody that she thought loved her unconditionally. Done everything in my power to keep her away from him. I think that's the biggest regret I have. It was a big struggle for me. It just killed me.
I questioned everything about my marriage from the beginning to the end. What was true, what wasn't true. One time, Jim got a phone call from a friend, and he said, well, no, of course I can't go. I'm married. When he hung up, I said, well, what was that about? And he said, oh, he wants me to go on a trip to Mexico with him. Well, why can't you go? Just because you're married doesn't mean you can't go. So I encouraged him to go. These were people that he said he worked with. I never would have expected him to run off on a vacation with his girlfriend. The following year, we planned a very similar trip, stayed in the same area. He said, oh, we have to do this. I did this last time. It's just confusing and weird to me that he would take us both on the same trip. People have asked me, how did you not know? How could you not know for 7 years? And my answer is always the same. I wasn't supposed to know. He made it supposed to know. I think he enjoyed it. I really do. I think he loved the game. I think he loved having 2 women. Absolutely. And I think it was just seeing what he could get away with.
Kind of thinking about what was going on, because I still was in the dark about everything. And my friend said, I'm gonna show you something and I don't think you're gonna be very happy about it. And then she showed me the article that someone had shared on Facebook that she saw. And she showed me, and that's how I found out what hair. And he killed the woman he was having an affair with. She gave me a hug and told me everything's gonna be okay. It was devastating to know that everything that had happened and that my world was completely flipped upside down. And I got and I remember I walked into my house and I saw a photo album on the table. And on the front of the photo album had a picture. I was really shocked to see that photo. I just couldn't believe it. I said, I know who this is. My friend and I were going to this Comic-Con thing, and I told my dad that I needed a costume made. And he said that he knew somebody who did that kind of thing. We drove out to our house. My dad introduced me to Molly Watson that day. There was nothing odd about it. On the way back home, my dad told me, she seems to really like you, and I replied back, yeah, she's a really nice person. I really like her too. Having me meet his mistress did make me pretty angry. Knowing everything that went on, I feel disgusted about it.
Molly Watson was shot with the gun pressed to the back of her scalp. The bullet that was recovered during Molly Watson's autopsy was mangled and damaged, and so it was not able to be used to identify the murder weapon. On it, they circled areas where they tested positive for the presence of blood, and then there are some markings indicating where that DNA was consistent with Molly Watson's DNA. Addy indicated he left his home at 7 p.m. that night to go meet with a coworker. However, the coworker indicated that he had not had any plans to meet with James Addy and that he and James Addy were not even close enough to have each other's cellular telephone numbers. And his daughter, Emma, said that she was up doing homework and that James Addy did not get home until 10 p.m. Out for James Addy's whereabouts between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m.
I had to identify this t-shirt to an investigator that came to the house. This is us, and there's no other shirt like it in the world. I made about 3 or 4 t-shirts, and I brought them home, and I gave them to my dad, and he was just gonna use them as rags in the garage. And then it turns out one of those t-shirts had Molly's blood on it. I just don't think anybody would see, like, their dad that they grew up with, and had the logical side of me knows that he's guilty. But the emotional side of me wants to believe that he's not.
James liked Molly, he liked Melanie, he liked his kids. His whole life was a lie. And she was talking about the wedding. She said, I don't know if it's going to be put off a little bit or not. And she said, well, his wife was in a car wreck. She's on life support. And they're going back and forth on pulling the plug on her. And then a couple of days later, she got a hold of me and said, hey, they pulled... This is the text between Molly and James the day of her murder. James, the funeral is tomorrow. I love you. Molly, I'm much. James, my nerves are shot. I'm getting ready to head to the airport to pick people up for the funeral. The funeral they're discussing in this is Melanie's funeral. And it turns out she's very much alive. This guy was the ultimate con artist, that's for sure. I think she definitely started to put 2 and 2 together. I think if Molly had found out the truth about James, I think she would have ended the relationship knowing he was married. What she had confronted Mom that night.
You can only lie your way out of so many situations. And this was just as big a lie as could be. I'm obviously not dead. What are you thinking? What were you thinking? I don't know if I was just the enemy and he thought he deserved someone else, or she flattered his ego. Was I so bad that I deserved this? I think I just went in angry, and I'm not sure he could at that moment, but I wanted to know everything. It was very hard. It was very hard to know what to do and how to feel, because I felt bad for him. I felt very bad for him. But to fix the problem, then would he have done that to me? Why did he think this would work? He didn't have any clear answers. I just asked him why would he do this to us? He admitted he'd had an affair, and he was sorry. He apologized, and he said, I didn't know we had such a perfect life. He said he did not kill her. I didn't really expect him to tell me the truth. I think at that point I had already known that he was guilty. I said, well, I think they're going to get you for this.
The lab analysis indicated that the right rear tire of James Addy's car had left the impression that was cast. That placed James Addy's car at the crime scene. As well, there were 2 witnesses who had been held in the Monroe County Jail at the time that Mr. Addy was placed in jail. He indicated to them that he had put someone face down in a ditch. There was a mountain of evidence tying this crime to James Addy. He was the one with motive, means, and opportunity. James Addy was living this thing. Molly Watson believed she was getting married right up until the last day of her life. Melanie Addy believed she was living in a normal marriage with her husband, and these 2 lives were on a collision course. He was going to be forced to make a choice. Her out like a piece of garbage, which was consistent with how Molly Watson's body was found abandoned and just left on a dirty, dusty road in Monroe County, Missouri.
Was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life. I knew that if I looked at him while I was on the stand, I was gonna cry. So after I got off the stand, I looked at him. He was crying. My dad and I were so close, and I had never thought that he would be leaving his family. He already had a family at home, so I don't know why he would need anything else. I thought Dad had loved all of us. I thought he loved the life he had. But I don't know why he would risk it all. I never confronted him with that. I never spoke to him.
Do you think you'll ever forgive your dad for what he's done?
I don't know how to answer that one.
After Jim was gone, it was the darkest time of my life, and it was hard. It was very hard. There are no winners here. Everything around it is just so sad. We're just not those same people anymore. Kind of made me redefine who I am. I'm not this man's wife anymore. And I think that was an identity for me. And that was a big thing, to redefine myself as a single woman, because I never thought I would be. I think I've come a long way.
Over the edge mentally, and she was actually diagnosed with severe psychological trauma from Molly's murder. And my dad, he ended up passing away of a heart attack, and then my mom totally lost the will to live. Her last couple of weeks, she didn't eat, she didn't drink. I can't describe dying in front of you. It was an awful feeling. I think both of my parents would be alive today if Molly wasn't murdered. I feel like James Addy took my entire family away from me. I squarely blame him for it. James had 10 different ways to end a relationship.
Hi everybody, it's Molly. Today I am just kind of doing a general vlog. I figured I would just kind of give a little bit of background on me so you kind of get to know me.
I love this video. That is my sister. That is her 100%. I've actually gone to bed before with it playing on the TV just so I can hear her voice. And it's a big comfort to me.
I have 2 degrees in psychology, a bachelor's and a master's. I'm working on a second master's in counseling, and
it gives me what I miss about her most. These videos are more precious than a lot of stuff. But this video in particular is just Molly.
So I'll catch you guys later, and bye!
The first time Detective Rowan Hale saw the town of Renfield, it wore a collar of fog like a contrite animal. The morning train sighed into a station built of brick and regret, and Rowan stepped down with 2 bags, a leather satchel packed with case notes, and a grief that never fit anywhere: missing persons. For in 7 weeks, the county sheriff's office was overloaded and understaffed. Someone at HQ remembered Rowan's knack for the unsolvable and sent him to assist. Assist, not lead. Small town politics had rules like old wallpaper: brittle, hard to peel off. Always a pattern beneath the pattern. He expected resistance. He didn't expect Officer Mara Kessler. She met him on the platform in a navy jacket embroidered with Renfield Police, and an expression like clean steel. She didn't offer to take his bags. She didn't offer a handshake either. She nodded. "You're the detective," she said. "You're Officer Kessler." "Mara," she corrected, already turning toward the lot. "You're late." "The fog," he said. "It's always the fog," she said, with a finality that made him follow. They drove uphill through narrow streets, lined with gabled houses and porches decorated with mums. Election posters clung to fences. Re-elect Mayor Silas Wren in Forest Green Serif. The same color as the river dragging itself along the edge of town. The mayor's face on the signs was competent, grandfatherly, the smile of a man who'd been photographed enough to know where the camera liked him. Mara parked in front of a building with a bell tower and a few cars out front to mean anything, but understaffed. Inside, Rowan met the sheriff, a genial man who'd already decided to retire in spirit, if not in fact, and more important, life or thin files spread on a table. Victim 1, June Lefevre, 21. Barista, vanished on her way home from a late shift. Victim 2, Dwayne Pike, 57. Night watchman at the paper mill. Went for coffee, never came back. Victim 3, Anya Ruby, 34. School librarian. Left a voicemail at 9:13 p.m. saying, "I hear singing." By 9:35 her car was found idling by the river. Victim 4, Calvin Mock, 14. Cyclist. Disappeared 2 blocks from home. Rowan turned the pages slowly. Photographs, the kind that always looked too glossy for the people inside them. All 4 cases had been initialed by Mara Kessler. "Your primary?" he asked. "I picked up June's case," Mara said. "By Dwayne, it was mine because I wouldn't put it down. By Anya, nobody argued with me. Calvin," she stopped, set her jaw. "Calvin's mother and I grew up together." The sheriff excused himself with an apology about a Rotary Club lecture. When the door closed, the room got bigger and quieter. "Tell me what I don't see," Rowan said. Mara leaned her hip against the table. The footprints near the river weren't just one set. Someone else stood in the mud with Anya for a long time. Long enough for the prints to fill with water. June's phone pinged near Wren Hill at 2:03 a.m., the hill where the mayor's mansion is. Dwayne's last coffee break was at Green Chapel Diner. Its back alley faces a side road that winds to the mayor's private drive. Calvin's bike was found at the base of Wren Hill too. You think the mayor is involved? I think the hill is involved. Her eyes lifted to his, weighing what she'd just chosen to say out loud. Renfield's name is on him. The mansion's older than the town charter. It's the Wren family's original estate. No warrant gets past his lawyers. No drone is allowed in the historic corridor airspace. I drove by. I looked through the hedges. I smelled beeswax. Heard she tensed. It doesn't matter what I heard. It was nothing. What did you hear? Rowan asked. She stared at him. Singing. They worked the rest of the morning through the cases like combing hair snarled by saltwater. Rowan had a talent for the insignificant. A receipt, a timestamp, a bent staple. Tiny facts that often confessed the larger ones. Mara had a map of the town in her head, and the stubborn energy of someone who refused to surrender, even when she already knew the odds. At noon they walked to the Green Chapel. The diner's bell chimed, and for men at the counter turned and turned away again. Rowan noticed hands, a cook's burned scars, a student's ink stain, a farmer's split knuckles. He also noticed Mara touching the brass bell 3 times, quick and compulsive, as if the act kept something from tipping over. Superstition, he said. Insurance, she replied. The waitress blew eyeliner. Name tag Jada-powered coffee as if she were pouring information. Dwayne came here the night he vanished, Rowan said. Dwayne came here every night, she said. Hash browns, jelly toast. Liked grape. Nobody likes grape. Did you see anyone with him? Anyone watching him? Jody shrugged. Cops already asked. I told them. The mayor sits back there sometimes. She nodded toward a booth with a view of the alley. Late nights when a council meeting runs long or when he wants to avoid being seen leaving City Hall. He gets tea. Always pays in cash. Tips exactly 20%. Those are the men that worry me. The ones who calculate their kindness. Mara and Rowan exchanged a look. Did he sit there the night Dwayne came in? Rowan asked. Do I look like I keep a ledger? Jody said. She did, though. Turned her order pad over to reveal a grid of dates and initials. Yes, he did. Stayed late. He was already there when Dwayne arrived. Dwayne waved. The mayor didn't look up. Is there a back door to the alley? Mara asked. Jody glanced toward the kitchen. The latch sticks. You have to lift while you turn. It screams like a kid. Would we hear it over the radio? Rowan asked. Only if you were listening, Jody said. They left at 20, that wasn't calculated, and walked into the alley. The door screamed, as advertised. A single camera over the dumpster blinked its red eye into the fog. Footage, Rowan asked. Gone, Mara said. Months worth wiped when we asked for it. The owner said the recorder fried in a surge. Everyone's electronics fail near the hill. Everyone's memory too, she said. They stood there, the diner's back wall sweating with humidity. The river's green voice low beyond the warehouses. Rowan remembered the voicemail. I hear singing. You heard it too, he said quietly. Mara looked at him for a long beat. When I drove past the hill at night, it might have been wind in the hedges, a dog in a basement, a radio 3 houses over. It might have been in my head. Does that help? It helps me like you, Rowan said. You don't have to like me, she said. I know, he said. But I do. Something changed in the air then at romance. Not yet, but a recalibration. She looked away first, but when she did, he saw the corner of her mouth try not to move. By late afternoon, they had enough for Rowan to request a quiet conversation with the mayor. Silas Wren received them at City Hall in a room full of photographs of Silas Wren doing things. Cutting ribbons, shaking hands, smiling with dignitaries. He was tall, its own kind of power. He had an accent that suggested summers abroad. You suspect me, he said without preamble. Officer Kessler always has. I suspect proximity, Rowan said. For disappearances. For paths converge on Wren Hill. I live on a hill, Wren said, amused. I also live in a house with lights on at reasonable hours, with staff, with cameras, with a wife who would be more convincing as a conspirator if she weren't allergic to secrets. You want a tour? Schedule with my assistant, preferably after the campaign. He turned to Mara. Officer, I hear you're throwing your support behind my opponent's reform platform. Shame. You have such promise. Promotion track. If you'd only stop, how shall I put it, seeing hymns in hedges. Mara didn't flinch. Sir, I want for people found or for graves discovered. I don't care who cuts ribbons. Silas Wren's eyes rested on her for a breath too long. He smiled. I care very much who cuts ribbons, he said softly. And the way he said it wasn't about ribbons at all. Outside City Hall, Mara exhaled a wordless noise. He knows we're coming. He wants us to come, Rowan said. On his terms, which are visible, polite, daylight, scheduled. Mara leaned against a column, closed her eyes. So we go at night. Do you trust me? He asked. Less than I want to, she said. Which means I probably should. They met at midnight 2 nights later. Fog bruised the streetlights and made the town look unfinished. They parked 2 blocks below the Wren estate and walked the rest, breath white in the cold. The wrought iron gate wore a W the size of a man. They took the footpath along the fence that the map app insisted didn't exist. It did. All the necessary paths existed when people needed them enough. Beyond the hedges, beeswax, yes, and something metallic. The mansion rose out of the hill, all angles and original sin. It was older than the town, not only in the sense of age. It felt like a rule the town had been built around. Rowan's flashlight was low and curtained with his palm. He had a pair of trim snips in one pocket, a warrant he couldn't use in the other. At the east lawn, a gardener's gate was latched with insurance, not conviction. Rowan cut a whisper in the wire. They moved through lavender and rosemary that bruised willingly under their knees. At the conservatory, glass loomed like a second sky. Inside, rows of citrus trees slept under cables that hummed with warmth. Electric generators, Mara murmured, independent of town power. Pretty citrus, Rowan said. Pretty alibis, she replied. He admired her then, absurdly, in the greenhouse glow, hair tucked under a knit cap, jaw set like a promise she'd made to herself before anyone else. A service door opened onto a stone hall. It should have smelled like polish and money. It smelled like vastness. Some houses wear their size with artful echo, expensive emptiness. This one swallowed sound the way wells swallow coins. Rowan mapped as he moved. Left, catering kitchen, immaculate, something cooling in a pan that wasn't dinner. Right, framed oil portraits of Wren men with portrait smiles. Straight, a corridor hung with photographs of nothing. They were landscapes of fog. Beautiful, expensive, heartless. Mara overlooked none of it, but she kept angling them toward the north wing without explaining. Rowan let her guide him. They reached a door that wasn't listed on the evacuation plan displayed at the corridor's end. A keypad waited. Beneath it, in brass, emergency stare. Code, he whispered. Mara handed him a folded card. City contracts, suppliers, catering, maintenance, every invoice number from the last 5 years. He's vain. He reuses sequences. Rowan tried 11/20 for Election Day. Red blink. He tried 1776. He was a cliché sometimes. Red. He studied the keypad, oily with touch except for 0 and 9. Cameras, Mara whispered. And it's cold in here. He typed a date from an invoice, 0909. Green. The door unlocked with a sigh that wasn't mechanical. The stairwell descended. Sound dampened. He counted his steps so his heart didn't. 23 steps down, a landing. 23 more. If a house could have a throat, they were inside it now. At the bottom, another door. No keypad this time. A keyhole polished by use. Mara lifted a chain from under her shirt, the key as old as the house. You have a key, Rowan said. Evidence locker spare, she said. Long story. Don't ask me to tell it unless we live. She turned it. The door swung inward. The room was a chapel built from the bones of a bunker. Not religious, no cross, no pews, but it had the feeling of worship. A vaulted concrete ceiling arched overhead. Beeswax candles burned in disciplined rows. Their scent was the one that clung to the hedges. Along the walls, alternating alcoves held mirrors and speakers. In the center, instead of an altar, a circle of woven reeds and copper wiring lay on the floor, like a wreath fallen from a giant door. What is this? Rowan said, and all his training felt like childhood. Mara didn't answer because something else did. From the speakers, a note bloomed. Not loud, not yet. A single human tone, pure and steady, held longer than lungs could hold. Another joined it, a fifth above. Another, low and patient as earth. It wasn't singing in the sense of melody. It was sustained sound, a horizon that didn't end. The kind of music the world made before anyone had words for it. The mirrors vibrated. The copper ring hummed. Mara's breath shortened. "Rowan," she said, the first time she'd said his first name. "We need to go." The door clicked behind them. Silas Wren stepped from a side alcove with the insolent grace of a man who could afford to wait. He wore a suit that had never learned rumple. He closed the door with a pleasant click and leaned against it like a host who'd planned this reveal. "I told you to schedule," he said. "I don't like rude." "Where are they?" Mara said, with a ferocity that made Rowan's pulse correct itself. "In the river," Wren said mildly. "In the town. In the room. Depends how you define our." He lifted his hand. The notes held. They did not waver, as if human throats had become instruments, and the instruments had learned how not to need air. "What have you done?" Rowan said, not angry, not yet, simply unable to keep the question inside his chest. Silas Wren smiled. "I kept the town safe," he said. "Once a year, for as long as my family has had the honor, Renfield must be tuned. Cities are like harps. They fall out of tune, people go feral, the river rises, industry dies. We learn to build a choir in a room meant to endure. We collect the notes we need, pure tones from pure throats. It's art, detective. It's civic duty. It's an old contract. You kidnapped them," Mara said. "You killed them." He tilted his head. "You insist on clumsy verbs. We kept them. We used what they could give. Sometimes a body fails under honorable work." He gestured toward the walls. Rowan saw now what he hadn't dared to name, the subtle movement at the base of the mirrors. The half-closed eyes reflected throats secured by leather at the base of the alcoves, mouths covered by a delicate lattice, tubes feeding air with machine generosity. Not alive in the sense he wanted alive, but not dead in the sense the law liked dead. That endless tone was made by kept larynges helped by breath their bodies couldn't supply. Rowan swallowed bile. The notes didn't waver. He could feel their rules in his bones. "June," Mara whispered, moving toward an alcove the way someone approaches a cliff. "Anya, Calvin, Dwayne." Silas Wren's smile cooled. "Two were selected before the River Festival. One was donated by a family we paid very well. One wandered in and answered the room. We don't take. We invite. We are careful with consent." Mara turned on him so fast that the air behind her hair slapped. Calvin Mock was 14. Wren's eyes gleamed. Another man might have called it sorrow. The young sing truer. Their A is less ruined by bills and mortgages. Rowan had his gun out without remembering drawing it. It didn't feel useful in a place like this. "Release them." Wren lifted both hands as if to bless. "If I release them, the town loses its tuning. The mill closes. The river floods. The heroine comes back. Half your department moves away. You think the world is a series of individual choices. I tell you the world is orchestration. I am its conductor. You want to arrest me? You want a trial? Bring your jurors here. Let them hear what they live beneath. They'll decide they prefer order to virtue." Mara took a step toward him. "I prefer neither to you." Silas Wren was still smiling when Rowan moved toward the copper ring. He had no plan for what he would do when he reached it. He only knew that the room sang, and something in his spine tilted toward joining. He thought of the diner waitress who hated men who calculated their kindness. He didn't want to calculate. He wanted to break. "Rowan," Mara said, close to his ear now. "Don't touch it." He crouched. The ring was woven from reeds and copper wire, the reeds oiled, the copper cleaned lately. At four equidistant places, rows of beads punctuated the weave, bone, maybe, or stone carved thin. He saw markings on them, numbers. 23, 23, 23, 23. He looked at her. "Steps on the stairs," he said. "Quarter tones," she said. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small pair of paramedic shears, blunt-nosed, ugly. "Perfect. Why do you carry those?" he asked. "Insurance," she said. "Superstition." Silas Wren sighed. the way a magician sighs when a child guesses the trick. If you cut it, the town will wake up, Mara said. In the night, he said. Better the night than this, she said. She knelt with him. Their shoulders touched. He felt the contact like proof he wasn't alone in choosing wrong together. He slid the shears under the first bead set. She steadied his hand. He cut. The note faltered barrelia rippling on the skin of a pond. Silas Wren flinched at fear, annoyance. You'll bring the river down on your own heads, he said. You don't know the math. Neither do you, Rowan said. You inherited it. He cut the second set. The note shivered. A light somewhere in the ceiling popped softly, like the smallest knuckle in a smallest hand. Wren took a step forward, but Mara straightened, and the gun in her hand was a truth larger than his name. Don't, she said. He spread his hands again, showing her and the saints he didn't believe in that his palms were empty. I am what stands between this town and the chaos that built it, he said. My great-grandfather learned that the mill needed a river that sang and a workforce that slept. He learned that fear can be tuned the way a chord can. You will cut the wrong place, Officer Kessler, and the first house that floats away will be your friend's mother of the boy. You imagine you're saving. Mara's mouth compressed. She looked at Rowan for one half of a heartbeat, and in that look he recognized everything they had not said and the fact that it existed, even if they never spoke it. Cut, she said. He cut the third set. The mirror nearest them cracked a hairline first, then a spider. For the first time, the sustained note failed, and in its place came something like a human breath mistaken for a sob. Mara swayed. He steadied her with his shoulder. The fourth set waited. Silas Wren moved. He moved with the grace of a man trained to win rooms. He was on Rowan in an instant, a blow aimed not to injure but to interrupt. Rowan fell sideways into the copper. A jolt traveled up his arm like a static shock raised to the scale of a memory. The note roared not volume, but presence. The room learned they were in it. Mara fired. She didn't shoot Wren. She shot the speaker above his head. It exploded into a puff of cloth and cone. The hum wobbled like a drunk looking for the door. Finish it, she said to Rowan, not looking away from Silas Wren. I've got him. Rowan crawled, cut the fourth set. The copper loosened like a belt. The candles guttered. The mirrors bled their cracks. The hum fell apart into human exhalations, then into silence so deep it knocked. All three of them stood very still in that new quiet. Then the alarms began somewhere else of kind that belonged to systems that had been told to panic. If music stopped, doors elsewhere unlocked. In the alcoves, the leather straps went slack. The lattice over mouths clicked open with a noise like teeth refusing. Rowan reached the nearest alcove. The throat there was Calvin's, not the whole boy. The world had not given them that but the delicate architecture of his voice. Being kept by a machine. Rowan turned off the air. He watched nothing happen. He felt useless and human and wrong. Mara holstered her gun without taking her eyes off Wren. Call it in, she said to Rowan softly. To who? He asked. To the part of the world that still believes we can fix what we break, she said. To anyone who will come. He called the sheriff. He called state. He called the number on the back of his badge that went to a calm woman whose voice never changed. He said words he would not remember later. Silas Wren leaned against the wall and looked at the ring like a father at an ungrateful child. The expression that finally settled on his face was not grief. It was fatigue. You'll learn, he said to them, conversational in the way of men at the end of their rope. The town will learn. There are costs. There is always a room somewhere collecting them. If not mine, someone else's. Not this one, Mara said. Footsteps pounded above. A sound of new people who didn't know the stair had 23 steps to a landing, and 23 more to regret. Voices shouted. Accountability descended, late but loud. The town did flood, though not in a way the history books would blame on a detective and an officer with shears. The river rose 2 days later after a rain cell stalled, and the water found the lowest placed unpermitted basements, and the old cans of paint, and the cardboard secrets. Insurance adjusters shook their heads as if the sky had wronged them personally. The paper mill shut for 4 days and reopened with a new board. The heroin the mayor had feared didn't come. Fentanyl did, as it always finds a way in. But the town did not disintegrate. It did what towns do, pretended nothing had happened, and told the story of what had in a way. That made the right people heroes and the wrong people theoretical. Wren was indicted on everything the law had language for and several things. It had to invent language to reach. His lawyers said words like tradition and utility and misunderstanding. A judge said no. The room under the hill was dismantled carefully and then not carefully. When the contempt rose in the contractors' throats, the copper was hauled out in coils, the reeds burned, the mirrors crushed, the alcoves were labeled with names, and the families came to take away what could be taken away and to stand before cavities that had once been called keeping. On a morning when the fog lifted enough to see distance, Rowan stood on the courthouse steps with a coffee that had the wrong sugar. Mara joined him with a sandwich she didn't eat. "It doesn't feel like victory," he said. "Because we didn't save anyone," she said. "We saved everyone," he offered, and burned his tongue on the lie. She smiled without privilege. "We saved the next ones," she said. "Sometimes that's the only math that doesn't punish you for being too late." He turned to her. He hadn't allowed himself to look too long at anything in weeks, but he looked at her now. "I'm going back to the city when the paperwork is less vindictive," he said. "I know. You could come," he said, not meaning the city. "I can't," she said, meaning the town. "They need someone who remembers what the hill does to the brain. Also, I have a cat who likes this fog." He laughed. "I didn't know you had a cat. You don't know a lot of things," she said. "I'd learn," he said. She set the sandwich on the rail. "I know," she said. He didn't touch her. He didn't kiss her. They were not that kind of storynet yet, maybe not ever. They were to people who had stood in a room shaped like a secret and cut it open. And that made a different kind of vow. "Come for the fall festival," she said, as if she were daring him. "The town is ugly then. Honest. We put pumpkins on porches like talismans. We pretend gourds are armor. I'll bring decent coffee," he said. "Bring grape jelly," she said, and he laughed in a way that didn't apologize to anyone. On his last night in Renfield, he walked up Wren Hill legally, by appointment. The state had posted a notice like a scar across the gate. The house was open to inspection and to a silence that still remembered the notes. That used to live there. He stood in the room that was no longer a chapel. It smelled like bleach and abandoned purpose. He half expected to hear a hum stitched into the concrete, but sound like power. Needs people to feed it. He found a tiny piece of copper by the wall, twisted, forgotten. He slipped it into his pocket, not as a trophy, not as evidence, but as a reminder that what people build to make themselves feel in control is always small enough to fold. When he left, the fog was thin enough to see the river practice being gentle. Down at the diner, Jody would be pouring coffee and forgiving no one. Somewhere, families were setting out one more plate without saying why. The mayor would be sleeping badly in a place where no one sang. At the base of the hill, Mara waited by the car. She raised a hand. He raised one back. It was not a promise, not exactly. It was an answer to a question neither had asked. "Will we see each other again?" The law didn't have a form for that. The heart did. They drove into town together without speaking. The road unrolling like a ribbon cut for the right reason. Finally,